Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
Yo, hello. A little bit of a snowy day today, Steve. Just a little bit of snow outside. You know, only the best.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And the better part for you is no Jason. It's me.
Oh, man, I'll tell you right now. He said, well, I got to go take care of a couple things tomorrow. We all know it's that'll be quite the therapy session.
Oh, what a night in football it was.
It was. So let me get to this. I mean, a story is going. First of all, ESPN did it right. And they just did the game last night. Mm-hmm. Because, look, when everything was going around crazy here, when Jim Harbaugh was over at the Wyndham waiting to see if he could coach or not, and there was a swirl, Jack and I never mentioned it on the broadcast. We just did the game. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's all we did. We just did the game. If somebody wanted to bring it up pregame, that was up to them. We never brought it up. It never came up in the pregame. We just did the game. Post-game, we just did the post-game. And ESPN did exactly that right last night. And I thought that Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit, Holly Rowe, Molly McGrath all handled it exactly the way it should be handled. They just did the game. Let all the other stuff around it and let others pontificate about what did or didn't happen. So now that they've won it, I mean, credit to them for a great performance, a 15-0 season, everything that goes with it, and so forth. But now the questions have to start to be answered about how they got here. So let's start with this. We all know about the NCAA going after them over what Jim Harbaugh said, this is just over cheeseburger. And, of course, the NCAA said, no, it's not about a cheeseburger. It's about recruiting during COVID when you weren't allowed to recruit. Mm-hmm. You need to ask yourself how many of the veteran players on that team were recruited during that time and played last night.
Mm-hmm. At least a few of them, probably.
Right? I mean, but I'd let you know, you'd like to know. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the start. Now, the next part about the sign stealing. Let's take it one step further. They were looking at everybody. I mean, Penn State, they were eventually going to see 6 Penn State games. They think they saw 4, maybe 3. They were going to see 6. I think they saw 4. Ohio State, they were going to see 8, right? And they ended up seeing 4 or something like that. Maybe it was 5. They actually scouted Georgia. All right, it's what alleged. Right? They also looked at Michigan State. That's the key. Mm-hmm. You know why that's the key?
Because Michigan State, the one who made the stink about it. They were the first ones to be like, we're going to sit out.
Nope.
Oh.
Michigan State played Washington.
I see. A bit of an issue. A little bit.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Michigan State played Washington.
The thing that happened.
And that is something that was never brought up by anybody. But it was something that I'm watching last night. I'm like going, yeah, because, I mean, Washington went in there and Washington crushed Michigan State. They killed them. Mm-hmm. But Michigan, and I don't know if that's one of the games or not, but they were, remember, Central Michigan, Michigan State, where was he standing? Mm-hmm. It is alleged that he was standing on the Central Michigan sideline because they wanted to take a long, hard look
at Michigan State.
At Michigan State. In-state rival, whole thing.
And I want to presume if you watched Michigan State in that game, you probably would have paid more attention in a different game to the opponent of that team, because that would make more sense. Instead of watching a team twice, you watch each team once.
And I mean, I'm sure the focus was on one, maybe not the other, but I'm saying that, there is a strong possibility that they were at the game. The game took place September 16th at Michigan State, right in the middle of all of this. Right in the middle of all of this. Now, that's what's so interesting about it. And they won. Look, Washington won the game 41-7. I don't know how Washington gets their signals in or how they do it. I have no idea. But I'm not saying. All I'm saying is it's not out of the realm of possibility. The NCAA does not like the fact that it is their opinion that Jim Harbaugh lied to them. Okay, that's their opinion. I'm not saying pro or con. But always remember about the sign stealing part of it. All right? Why is it that they were going to court to fight the suspension and then dramatically backed off? Why? Because it's one thing to sit there and debate policy, the sportsmanship policy. And you can debate that. There are certain, ways, sentences. You look at it. You can debate that. Here's what you can't debate: evidence.
Something was shown to Michigan to be like screwed up.
The way I understand it is this: the NCAA cannot tell Michigan what they have. Okay, because if the second they do, Michigan then has 90 days to respond. Okay, right now at some point they will, but they have 90 days to respond. But they can tell the Big Ten, and the Big Ten in turn can tell Michigan. And my understanding is that's how it played out. That they were told, hey, guess what? This is what because how we're going to fight this. We're going to fight it. Oh, good for you. Great. You're not going to fight it. Why not? Now, to their credit, without their head coach, Sharon Moore and those guys, they were able to get wins over Ohio State, Penn State, Maryland in that stretch run. And then, of course, they shut out Iowa, beat Alabama with Jim, and then, of course, won the national championship. But before everybody starts jumping ahead, take the journey here, which is very difficult, I think, for some people to do. Take the journey. And the journey takes you all the way through, like, okay, Michigan State played Washington. I wonder if they were at that game. It was right in their own backyard. It's just an hour and a half from Ann Arbor to Lansing.
And I know exactly how long it is because I made that drive this past weekend.
You made the drive this past weekend, So it's not difficult. Michigan State's also one of the teams they're scouting. Washington's off to a good start. Maybe we ought to take a look at them because they're looking at Georgia. Right? It was alleged they're going to be at 6 Georgia games, including they had tickets to the SEC championship game.
Insane.
Right? Now, they all got blown up. I mean, starting with the Penn State-Ohio State game, everything got blown up. But this is where they are with it. They'll have fun. They'll have a parade. They'll celebrate. They'll tell the world they're number one. They'll tell, but you can't have your national championship film be entitled by any means possible.
They last night, and this became apparent quickly, is they were like, everyone was against us. The entire nation was rooting against us. Yeah, because it's alleged you cheated. So of course everyone's going to be against you. That's how it works. You don't the Patriots had the same thing happen with the Deflategate, and after they won, and they came out the next year and were like, "Oh my gosh, everyone's against us." Yeah, why are you surprised?
All right, and look, it's not it's not as if I don't have anything against what they do. I mean, Brian Bush, their basketball play-by-play guy, is a really good friend of mine. I think the world. I texted John Jansen after the game. He's their color analyst. Right? John got back to me. Brian got back to me. It's like, I'm thrilled for those guys. I know those guys. Now, the funny thing is, Doug, I don't know Doug at all. The play-by-play guy, because it was Brandstetter and and Deardorff for a long time. And then Frank Beckman before that with Branstetter. And Frank was a great guy. That dude can play some golf. Great. I mean, I get along with all these guys. Matt Shepard, had done basketball before Brian got it because Matt took the Tigers job. Now that job is with he left the White Sox. Jason Benetti got the Tigers job. But it's just it's something that there's a cloud hanging over this. I mean, you go through the whole process. How many of the older players on this team were recruited during that alleged time that the NCAA says they weren't allowed to be recruiting? I mean, you have to ask. Right? It's a legitimate question.
It is. It's a fair line of questioning.
Right? I mean, you'd have to ask. Next, when it comes to the sign stealing thing, it is alleged to have started in 2021. When did they start to get good?
2021.
They lost 16 years in a row to Ohio State. Penn State had beaten them 3 out of 4 years. I mean, Penn State beat them in 17, 18, and 20. I mean, and no offense, I kind of looked like, at that point, like going into 21, I kind of felt like Penn State had passed them. And all of a sudden, like, okay, now they're starting to win.
And win big.
Right? And win big. And I don't know. I mean, a lot of it's, they have excellent personnel. They are well coached. There's no getting around it. But there's too many questions about this team that it's going to, and I don't want, I hope they don't sit here and take a full off season to start doing this because I think they've got so much now. And I think I was listening to something yesterday about Tony Petitti was in a tough spot, had to suspend him because of the pressure from the other schools. Hey, over here in the back, okay, why did Michigan not fight it in court and back off dramatically the night before? Why? Or that morning? Why? Because one can guess that they were presented with, here's your problem. It's coming out in court tomorrow. Here's your problem. And they went, we don't need to fight that.
Now, of course, this season has now come to a close, and the discussion of next season has already popped up, with odds coming on out to who is favored for next season's title. Georgia's number 1, Alabama's number 2, and then the Big Ten teams you've got, Ohio State's 3rd at 8-1, Michigan State's 4th, 9-1 odds.
Michigan. Not Michigan.
Michigan State. Michigan, my bad. Oregon is sitting 6th at 12-1, and Penn State is sitting at 11th, 25-1 in terms of odds to win the title. You go down a little while, you got Washington down at about 17, 18, sitting at 60.
They lose a lot.
They're losing a lot, and so this is like early predictions. And of course, no one knows how it's going to turn out when the season starts because USC was a top 10 team at the start of last season, and they did not finish in the top 25.
Yes.
So it happens. It happens to a lot of teams. But that is the odds moving forward to next season, which is going to be a very intriguing 12-team playoff season, brand new SEC, brand new Big Ten, what's going to happen in the ACC. A lot of questions, and no Pac-12 to answer them.
Look, first
rest
of
in
all,
peace, Pac-12.
Okay, so let's start with the Pac-12 part of it.
R.I.P.
I'm really sorry to see it go. I like the Pac-12. I've mentioned it 1,000 times. I've enjoyed watching it. And I have really limited windows when I can watch other games. And let's face it, a lot of times those games would be, a Friday night game or a late Saturday game, depending on what time Penn State was playing. Of course, this year they played at noon almost every week. But, you're on the road, you're traveling back. Yeah. And so I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed watching, Washington State play Oregon, Washington play Arizona State, Oregon, USC, UCLA games. I enjoyed it. Pac-12 basketball. There's nothing like Bill Walton late at night.
Nothing like. I mean, he is a different breed of person.
Yes, Dave Pash and I have talked. We have. And so that's but you can't, but I can't control that. So they're done.
Yeah, they're out. I guess the next one's the ACC. We'll see. Like what's going on.
Yeah, we'll see
here.
about that. But so let's just start with the Pac-12.
Mm-hmm.
Look, USC saw the writing on the wall a long time ago.
Oh yeah,
and they were unhappy a long time ago, and so they got a hold of Mark Silverman at Fox and said, "Hey, is it possible?" Because at that point the Big Ten TV deal wasn't done yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a smart, savvy move by their former athletic director Mike Bone to make that phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Because instead of sitting there with the possibility of maybe getting $30 to $40 million per year,
mm-hmm.
which is what they thought they were going to get out of the Pac-12, maybe as high as 45.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're looking at getting 70 to 75 million a year. UCLA was in the same boat, except UCLA had a $104 million athletic department financial deficit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they're looking around. They need a lifeboat. Mm-hmm. Well, the Big Ten and the power of the market of Los Angeles gave USC and UCLA lifeboats.
Mm-hmm.
You're sitting there, you're Oregon and Washington, and you're looking around and you're saying, what do we need to do to save ourselves here?
Mm-hmm.
Do we stick with the Pac-12? And then, of course, when they got the TV deal,
mm-hmm.
and Apple offered, I think, originally 23, got it up to 25. There's a lot of incentives in there and so
mm-hmm.
forth, but would not allow linear to be a part of it. They wanted to be exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
That's when Oregon and Washington backed out and ran for the hills.
They were like, we're out of here by. It was like within 24 hours or something like that when they found that out.
Right. And
it's quick.
And they already had been pre-approved to the Big Ten,
mm-hmm.
or at least pre-vetted by the Big Ten a year ago. So the Big Ten already knew what they were getting in the two schools. Tony Petitti did a great job of going to Fox and saying, look, is it possible at, quote, half or less than half rate to get them on board, and can you foot the bill at $30 million a year for them?
Mm-hmm.
And it is alleged that the deal goes $30 million year one, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35 in the last year.
To build it up a little bit over time.
$1 million each year it goes up. And then they become full members
mm-hmm.
on the next TV contract. USC and UCLA will already be full members.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one has to pay an exit fee. Nobody has to worry about grant of rights because
mm-hmm.
it naturally runs out August 1st on both fronts. They
mm-hmm.
all four will become official members of the Big Ten on August 2nd
mm-hmm.
of this year. It changes the dynamic of the conference in travel, which is obvious, mm-hmm. but it also changes the dynamic of the conference and for them on both sides in terms of the degree of difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
If you are James Franklin, Ryan Day, Jim Harbaugh, Sharon Moore, whomever's in charge tomorrow, right, your job just got difficult by adding those four schools.
Mm-hmm.
If you are Lincoln Riley, Chip Kelly, Dan Lanning, and Kalen DeBoer, your job just got more difficult
mm-hmm.
starting today because now you've got Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin,
Iowa.
Right? Iowa, you've got
mm-hmm.
and not only that, you also have, this is something, this goes back, this is the experience of doing this for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember talking to Joe Paterno when Penn State entered the Big Ten. He says, Steve, he says, we got, I think at the time it was 8 new opponents. He said, we got 8 new opponents here. He says, we were able to take a video, at that point, film. He said, we're going to take film, put it up there. He says, okay, same left tackle as last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's a little bit better here. Nope, he's still the same here. Like, we knew people.
Mm-hmm. You're learning all new things, all new teams, all new.
All the way through. That's why when Maryland came in basketball the first year and did
mm-hmm.
so well, I voted Mark Turgeon the coach of the year
mm-hmm.
because they had to learn personnel across the board
mm-hmm.
of 13 teams that they never played.
Yeah.
right? They never played them, so they had to learn personnel.
Learn coaching styles, It's a lot of learning to do for everybody.
Right, across the board. Well, it's going to be a lot of learning across the board for the four of them out there. Yeah, I haven't looked at Washington. I don't know if they played Michigan State or not, but they're going to be dramatically different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, USC hasn't played Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State in years. Penn State last played USC was in the Rose Bowl. They haven't played UCLA since Jack was here. Okay? Oregon, 95 Rose Bowl game. Washington, the Fiesta Bowl. That was with Chris Peterson.
It's basically been a minute.
But Penn State will have to sit there and they'll have to learn 3 new opponents. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
They'll have to learn. Now, obviously Fickles knew at Wisconsin, but some of the people some people are the same from a couple of years ago. But they're going to have to come in and learn 9.
Yeah.
Plus whatever their non-conference is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of now. They have there's 2 bye weeks built in. And then in basketball, I will say this. Now here's one more part about this. Going to 12. The Big Ten, if you finish 4th, you got a chance to be in the playoff in this conference. Because I would say the Big Ten will get a minimum of 3, possibly 4 out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would say they have not announced what they're going to do. It's still right now 6-6. Okay, adorable, great. It's going to go 5-7. It has to go 5-7 because you can't.
Pac-12.
Right, because you can't have 2 group of 5 teams in. And no offense, again, Liberty had a great year. Nobody wants to watch them. Okay? They don't. It's just, it's a fact of life. Why was the Cotton Bowl this year 9.5 million viewers and last year was 4 million?
Mm-hmm.
And USC played in that Cotton Bowl, but they were playing Tulane.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference.
Major.
So it'll probably go 5-7.
Mm-hmm.
That means I think the Big Ten and the SEC, between the 2 of them, have an excellent chance of getting 9 of the 12 spots.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty much going to be Big Ten and SEC and then a couple conference champs, pretty much.
Well, yeah, like an ACC champ, a Big 12 champ, and
Cincinnati plays great this year.
They're in the Big 12.
Sorry, I forgot the
right, but so the top group of 5 team, whomever that may be. Okay. Well, because if you're going to get 9 of them, you could get 4 in the Big 10, 5 in the SEC, or 5 in the Big 10, 4 in the SEC, depending on how it breaks down.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can finish 4th and probably be in a decent spot to be considered.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there are more schools, more depth, but also more openings. Because now we get to the basketball model.
Oh, boy.
The basketball model is the Big Ten could get as many as 11 teams into the NCAA tournament under this. Mick Cronin, now, it's a couple of these teams have been up and down, but Mick Cronin has UCLA playing for the most part really well. Andy Infield's team is struggling a bit this year. It's more about, hey, Bronny had 10 and they lost. Bronny had 8 and blocked a shot. Okay, I got it.
The ticker or whatever they put the graphic, it was like stats of the 2 other players, and then Bronny was like team player. It was like, oh, you got like, that's bad. That's just bad TV.
But again, it's like he's a name. Bronny scores 4, blocks 2 shots. Ooh, and we got to see the 2 blocks. Like I got it. There, a lot of guys blocked 2 shots last night in college basketball. Okay,
yeah,
and the block shots probably helped them win the game. Okay, but now this year is interesting because Dennis Rodman's son's on that team too. Ellis is a really good player.
He's a Boogie Ellis, a baller.
Really good player, but they're up and down right now. Dana Altman's had some really good years at Oregon.
They're usually a pretty good team.
Washington with
Fultz, Markelle Fultz was a hit.
Yeah, but they were up for a little bit, then down. They run the 2-3. Hopkins has the same ideas as Jim Boeheim.
I still believe he should have succeeded Jim Boeheim when he was apparently meant to succeed Jim Boeheim, and then he got the offer at Washington and said, "Why not?" And then he took Isaiah Stewart with him, instead of bringing him to Syracuse. And it was a hard year for me to find that out because I was going to Syracuse and all I wanted was Hopkins to be coach and Isaiah Stewart to be our big man because we needed a big man and it was great. No disrespect to Pascal Chukwu, but he wasn't it. Sorry, Syracuse ran over.
Well, the way it seems to be playing out will be the next part. College football playoff is going to double in terms of money, up to $1.3 billion.
Not bad.
Okay.
The $1 billion is a pretty good number, I've heard.
Yes. Now, that's double what ESPN had been paying per year. But here's the other part. ESPN will be able to sublicense some of the games. Mm-hmm. Over here, Fox is waiting in the wings. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, the sublicense games in all likelihood would be the opening round.
Yeah. They're not going to sublicense a later round game. They're going to keep.
They're not going to sublicense the quarterfinals when they're sitting there on New Year's Day and they can have it. They can play a game on New Year's Eve and 3 on New Year's Day and then go from there. I mean, they're not going to do that. I mean, at that point, they want to take it home from there. That's their baby.
They hear ching. That's what they hear.
Right. And so, but the entire conference will get, in every sport, more difficult for them and get more difficult for everybody else here, because that is, is the way it's. When you expand, it should be that way. Mm-hmm. When the Big Ten expanded and brought in Penn State, the entire conference got tougher. Mm-hmm. And to the credit of the entire conference, they went out and said, "Hey, we've got to get better," and did. When they brought in Nebraska, it was supposed to make it tougher. But let's be honest, Nebraska hasn't really been tremendously relevant. I mean, they were a little bit with Bo Pelini.
They're always kind of there. They were flirting with being a good team.
With Bo.
But
you have a group out there that, you got to get eventually who you are. Frank Solich, who just went into the Hall of Fame. And by the way, Paul Posluszny, I'll talk about that in a moment. And by the way, Danny Hale at Bloomsburg was one of the other coaches too, and I've talked to Danny a couple times before. Danny's a great guy.
I have a Bloomsburg note as well. We'll chat about afterwards.
I'm thrilled for Danny Hale going into the College Football Hall of Fame. But Nebraska fans, they got rid of Frank Solich, who was the third coach that was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And because he was only winning 9 games. Really? How does 9 wins look now?
9 wins looks pretty darn good.
And I've been asking that question for years. They haven't been to a bowl game in 7 years, I don't think. Mm-hmm. So they've been in search of ever since. Then you added Maryland and Rutgers. Okay, I understand the, 14 to 16 million homes. I think it's 16 million cable homes or something like that. Okay, I got that part. It's not like Maryland hasn't made the NCAA tournament. They have. It's not as if Rutgers hasn't made the NCAA tournament. They have. Steve Peichel's done a great job there. But, I mean, I can tell you other people in the conference. Let's take Penn State out of this. Mm-hmm. Other people in the conference are being, Rutgers and Maryland coming in. I mean, they've grumbled to me about that. Mm-hmm. Like their fans are like, doesn't excite them. And conversely, when you go to Maryland, especially in basketball, you know what they talk about all the time? How badly they miss the ACC.
Completely understandable,
right? They miss playing Duke. They miss playing North Carolina. In basketball, it's just. It's in the end, they both have lifeboats. I mean, they were in the ACC. I mean, they're in the ACC. They're in trouble. Mm-hmm. Rutgers would have been in trouble. Rutgers has so much. I mean, my goodness. I mean, there are third world countries that have less debt than Rutgers athletics. I mean, they don't get a full share of the Big Ten because they're paying back loans until 2027.
Yikes.
Yeah, yikes. But then they added USC and UCLA. Sorry, that's a home run.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You add in Washington and Oregon. At minimum, that's triple, if not a home run. I think it's a home run. I think they all do what you want them to do. Seattle market, Portland market, Los Angeles, Southern California, right? And
about as good as it gets.
Really good. I mean, like, great. I mean, love it.
You also, something I think that is not been discussed enough is now all of a sudden when your teams go out west to play those teams, you get night games a lot more often and a lot easier. You get the ability to have games throughout the day to cover everything.
You do, but that's not what they want to do. They're not crazy about all the. But when you're talking night games out there, like, hey, if you're NBC, 7:30 time slot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 7:30 time slot is 4:30 in the afternoon out there. That's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
They're fine with that. They're fine with that. It's when they, oh, good, it's Pac-12 at night, it's 10:30, 7:30 game. It's like they weren't crazy about it. But when you're talking about 7:30 game, 4:30 local time, they're okay with that all the way through. And it also solves the dilemma of the Big Ten about Ohio State playing Michigan State at night. Now, the Penn State-Michigan State thing was solved by going to Ford Field.
Mm-hmm.
Because NBC is supposed to have 5 night games in the month of November. And I think the number is 6 for the upcoming year because November, it's 1, 8, 15, 22, 29. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Or actually it would be, 2, 9, 16, 23, 29, and 30.
Oh, yeah.
So that's 6.
Oh, boy.
Right. Well, with the West Coast, you can handle it. It's no problem.
Yeah.
You can handle that. That's not even an issue.
It adds in a lot of flexibility for scheduling.
Right. It does. And it gives everybody more inventory. Networks are looking for inventory all the time. Now, Paul Posluszny. Last time I saw Paul was a year ago. He was the honorary captain. I probably talked to him for like 10, 15 minutes. Western PA guy comes in, and you could see right away, this guy can play.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up wearing 31, but he came here, he wore 39 originally. And this guy was a great college player and just a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
Represented Penn State so well. I'll give you, he made a lot of great plays in his career. I'll tell you 2 of them right off the bat. 2005, he goes out and against Ohio State, Troy, let's go the week before. Minnesota's ranked 17th, undefeated. Penn State's undefeated, but they was like, okay, Ohio State's next week. You guys are hanging in there. Okay, got it. I think it was Lawrence Maroney. I think it was him. Flies up over the top of the goal line. And Posluszny flies up and meets him and knocks him cold to the ground. Like, boom. Like didn't gain an inch. And he didn't knock him out. He didn't do it. He
just hit him like a wall.
Just went up, and the 2 of them, and just denied him. Just gave his body up. It was a phenomenal play. The other one was then the next week, Troy Smith, who eventually would win the Heisman Trophy the year after, is rolling out to his right. Ohio State was going right to left from where we could see it, right to left. Rolls out to the far side, and Posluszny tracked him down and got him. He understood how to play the pass. He always knew the proper depth of a drop. Picked off a pass one time, ran it back for a touchdown. Was just a great player.
He's great in the NFL too. I think he made a Pro Bowl or 2.
Yeah, Buffalo and Jacksonville.
Pretty darn good player.
But just, I mean, talk about, and he won a Bednarik, and then just a all around 3 down, every down linebacker. Jack always raved about, look, he understands where to go, how far to drop. The Ohio State game where Calvin Lowry, and I've talked to Calvin about this. Calvin Lowry picked off a pass in the Ohio State game in 2005, and he ran it back to the 2-yard line, which set up a touchdown run by Michael Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
And Smith threw it out of the end zone. But the reason Calvin picked it off was Paul Posluszny. This is where the proper depth of a drop of a linebacker, why is it so important? He dropped to a point. Now Smith had to throw it over him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when he threw it over him, he cleared Posluszny, but he threw it too far because he was trying to clear Posluszny. And Calvin was playing center field, ran it back to the 2-yard line. Penn State won the game.
Mm-hmm.
This is how he always played. You could count on him every game to play well.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a single time where you're like, wow, Paul didn't play well. And he came here when fortunes were not great. And he was a big reason that helped turn those fortunes around.
Mm-hmm.
He got hurt in the Orange Bowl, and that's when Sean Lee stepped in as a true freshman.
Pretty good player as well.
Not bad.
Yeah.
I got this great picture I do have it in my office of Dan Connor, Sean Lee, and Paul Posluszny, the 3 linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about already in perfect position to start the play. I've got that up. It's too good. Finally, you had a Bloomsburg note? Since
did.
You're wearing Bloomsburg colors today.
I am wearing Bloomsburg colors, unintentionally wearing Bloomsburg colors.
You are deep down a Husky.
Yes. We have not yet discussed it here on the show, but the NFL announced the finalists for their Hall of Fame. It's going to be announced in a month's time from today during the Super Bowl, I believe, or the week afterwards, the NFL honors, something like that. One of the players is Bloomsburg's finest, Jari Evans, who played his trades with my New Orleans Saints. And I just wanted to shout him out here, being like, because he would be the first Hall of Famer for the Bloomsburg Huskies, and dude was one of the best players I've ever watched play on the O-line. Like, that Saints team in 09-10 was my team. That's the team I remember watching.
Sure.
I can name pretty much everybody through the third stringers and linebacker and cornerback and everything. And he was the all-pro guard. He was as good as it gets. 6'4", just a tank of a person, 4th-round pick for the Saints, and dominated in the NFL and possibly going to the Hall of Fame now, and deservedly so.
Good. That's great.
Just a cool Pennsylvania shout-out there.
Ibrahim Traore has put his name into the transfer portal from the Penn State offensive line. They've also put out their 2024 roster.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So everybody's like, oh, who's on the roster? Well, we can tell you who's not on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Dante Cephas is not on the roster.
Gone.
All right? But Keandre Lambert-Smith is. All right?
It's a positive surprise.
I mean, we'll see how the next
You've got a week
few
or so.
days. It's less than a week. It's Monday.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually it's one more week to go, but I think it's Monday next week they have to declare. It's always 1 week after the national championship game. That's why Jack was explaining we rode the defensive players bus back and forth to practice. So Jack was explaining to them how the draft worked back then. He said we just kind of worked out. The draft took place a month later. After it didn't really interview really much with anybody, and they kind of picked based on what they saw. The players all looked at me, what? Well, what about the combine? What about running a 40? What about jumping up? What about
Didn't do that stuff.
Right? It's like, I've always openly questioned whether the league is better because of the combine. Because there's so many players over the years that when Pro Day was over at Penn State, not just the combine, but Pro Day was over, how many of them exhaled and said to me, great, now I can get back to practicing football? Because they're practicing for the combine.
Well, that's the thing. There's stories, I believe it was Chris Johnson, who was like, yeah, I spent like a full month just doing sprints to try and get my 40 as fast as possible.
That's right.
And fair enough to him, dude is lightning quick. But the fact that that's a thing is literally you get track coaches teach you how to properly start and how to run. And it's just like, that's weird because, of course, that's not what you're doing in a game. Like, you're not in a sprinter stance going.
Right.
But in this case, you are. And I always thought that was wild and weird. And also how the O-linemen run it. And it's like, oh, my God, this guy, like, is so slow. It's like, oh, he's an O-lineman. Like, he's not meant to be the fastest person in the world at center. He doesn't have to be.
Right.
Like, why are you judging him for running a 5.1 or something? Let him be.
We have video on everybody these days. And it doesn't take much to say, hey, show me every single, let's take somebody like Chris Stahl, who ended up being a free agent, and he's the snapper now for Seattle. Mm-hmm. Seattle could sit there and say, hey, look, we need a snapper. Right? Show me every snap he had this season. They can do it. They can find it. Does it matter what 40 Chris Stahl runs? No, I do need him to get downfield. Mm-hmm.
But you don't need him to run a 5. You don't need him to run a 4.4.
Yeah, I'll give you one. I mean, Tyler Duzansky this year, he led all snappers in the country with 6 tackles. Okay, that's great. I mean, he can snap it, he can run. Okay, big pluses. But we need to get back to pro football. Needs to get back to football skills. Oh, they're skilled. No. Don't confuse, athleticism with knowing how to play football.
Well, that's the thing that got me for years, and we'll end on this. Like, it got me for years is watching the Raiders draft these guys who would run these 4.2s, 4.3s, but they would have zero ability to catch the football. Yeah. Or, for instance, right now, you look at the Chiefs with Kadarius Toney, drafted, of course, by the Giants, has had himself a hellacious year. He just has not been able to catch a pass, standing in the wrong spots, like everything that could go wrong.
What do you think his problem with the Giants was?
It's just like, you see these things, people see the speed, they see the agility, all of these skills. Those skills are cool and all, but if you can't catch a pass as a receiver, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, there's some players who are really good and who can develop certain traits, and they do.
Oh, look, a great athlete who knows how to play their particular sport is gold. Michael Jordan is who he is because Michael Jordan not only is a great athlete, Michael Jordan knew the game of basketball like the back of his hand.
Yeah.
He knew where you were supposed to be, where you were supposed to be, how you defended, what angle. Okay? When you have a great athlete that does that, you are Michael Jordan.
Athleticism, LeBron James, just built different.
LeBron James may be built differently, but LeBron James knows how to play. You can criticize him for 1,000 things. Do not criticize his ability to know how to play basketball ever.
Dude.
You may have different politics from him or a different life experience. Who cares?
Dude knows basketball.
The guy knows, and he knows what you're supposed to do, and he knows what that guy over there is supposed to do.
It's pretty good at what he does.
Yeah.
We'll be back tomorrow with more sports talk with Steve Jones.
Thank you for listening to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a 7 Mountain Media production. Come back at 11 every weekday for analysis of the latest happening in the sports landscape. From college football to European soccer, Steve and Kyle cover it all on Sports Talk with Steve Jones.